The auction of shame. The market was alive with cruel laughter and sharp voices. Cages lined the dusty square filled with creatures from many worlds, and in one dark corner, a girl sat chained like an animal, her skin pale from hunger and her body shaking from cold. She was small compared to the others, her thin arms wrapped around her knees as she tried to make herself disappear. The auctioneer, a tall alien with skin like stone, raised his voice above the noise. He slammed his stick against the stage and shouted that this girl was not even worth the price of meat. The crowd howled with laughter. Some shouted insults, others spat at the cage as if to prove his words true. She lowered her head, shame burning inside her, her heart heavy. She had heard these words too many times. To them, she was nothing, less than nothing, just another mouth they did not want to feed. The auctioneer pulled the chain, forcing her to stand. Her legs trembled and the crowd jeered louder. They mocked the way she swayed, saying even carrion birds would not waste time on her, and the words cut like knives though her eyes stayed down. She did not dare meet their gaze. But among the crowd, silent and unmoving, stood a human, his face partly hidden beneath a hood. He did not laugh. He did not shout. He simply watched, his eyes fixed on her, while around him the market was filled with noise and cruelty. The bidding began, numbers shouted carelessly, so low that even scraps of food were offered as better value. No one cared. No one wanted her. The auctioneer grew frustrated, his voice rising as he demanded at least one serious price, but the crowd only roared with more laughter. Then the human raised his hand, his voice calm, offering a sum far higher than anyone expected. The market froze. Silence fell like a sudden storm. All eyes turned toward him. The auctioneer blinked in shock, unsure if he had heard correctly. Whispers spread quickly. The human must be insane. Why waste such credits on this useless girl? Some laughed nervously, others scowled in confusion. Even the auctioneer hesitated before slamming his stick to confirm the sale. The chain was thrown to the human, and the girl stumbled forward, nearly falling. Fear surged through her chest. She could not understand why he had bought her. Every part of her expected cruelty worse than before. Maybe he wanted to use her for something even darker. As he led her from the stage, the crowd shouted behind them, mocking him, calling him a fool. One alien sneered that humans were too soft. Another said he would soon regret paying more than meat for garbage. Their voices followed, a storm of insults, but the human did not answer, his steps steady, his grip on the chain firm, yet not cruel. The girl's mind was a storm. She tried to guess his reason. Maybe he wanted to humiliate her further. Maybe he would sell her again. She dared not hope for anything else. Hope was dangerous. Hope had always been crushed before. They passed through narrow alleys behind the market, away from the crowds. The human finally stopped. He crouched down so his eyes were level with hers. His voice quiet and strangely gentle, he asked if she could walk. She blinked in shock at the softness of his tone. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Her lips trembled. She tried to answer, but no words came, her throat too dry. He did not grow angry. Instead, he unclipped the chain, tossing it aside. Her knees almost gave out. She looked at him in confusion, not understanding. He handed her a small piece of bread, real food, warm in his hand. She stared at it as if it were a trick, then slowly reached out, her fingers shaking. When she bit into it, tears filled her eyes. The taste was simple, but to her, it was life. The human watched silently, not smiling, not mocking, only watching with a steady gaze. When she finished, he stood again, telling her they would leave this place soon, his voice calm as if it were the most natural thing. Behind them, the sounds of the market still carried, the jeers, the cruel laughter, the insults about meat and worthlessness. But in that small alley, it felt distant, like another world. The girl hugged herself tighter, still afraid, but with a new question burning inside her heart. Why had this human paid so much for her? Why did he give her food? Why did he remove the chain? Nothing made sense. Yet something deep inside whispered that maybe this was not the cruelty she expected. Maybe something different was beginning. Her breath came unsteady, her heart raced. She wanted to believe, but fear held her back. The memory of being called worthless echoed in her ears. But when she looked at the human, she saw no laughter in his eyes, only something she could not name. And in that moment, though she did not yet know it, the story that would shake the galaxy had just begun. The unexpected purchase. The road away from the slave market was long and crowded, yet the human walked with steady steps. The girl followed quietly, her bare feet sore against the rough stone, her stomach twisting not only from hunger, but from fear of the unknown. Every time she looked at him, her heart raced, waiting for the moment when his kindness would turn into cruelty. The crowd behind had already forgotten her, their laughter replaced by other trades and shouts. But in her head the words repeated again and again, worth less than meat, the auctioneer's voice echoing like a curse she could not escape. She hugged her arms tighter, trying to hide herself from the eyes of the world. The human finally stopped near an old building where the noise of the market grew distant. He opened the door and guided her inside. It was a small room with a bed, a table, and a lamp that burned with soft yellow light. She froze in the doorway, afraid to enter, afraid to move. He looked at her and spoke in calm words, telling her to sit. His voice was not sharp, not cruel, only firm. She sat slowly on the edge of the bed. The soft fabric under her thin body felt unreal. She had been used to cold floors and hard stone. This felt like luxury beyond reach. From a bag he pulled food, not just bread this time, but water, fruit, and cooked meat. The smell filled the room and made her dizzy. Her mouth watered, yet she did not reach for it. She had learned before that food often came with pain, a trap to punish her if she moved too quickly. The human noticed her hesitation. He broke a piece of fruit and placed it in her hand, then stepped back, giving her space. She stared at the piece as if it were magic, then slowly raised it to her lips. The sweetness filled her mouth and tears rolled down her face. She could not stop them. She hated that he saw her cry, but she could not help it. He spoke again, asking her name. She shook her head, whispering that she had none. Long ago it had been taken from her. No one cared to call her anything but slave, garbage, or worse. The human frowned, his eyes narrowing as if angry not at her but at the world that had done this. He said firmly that she would need a name. Every person deserved a name. She looked at him in confusion. No one had ever cared about such things. His words felt heavy, as if they carried more meaning than she could understand. Still, she dared not speak. She only listened as he told her to rest, that she was safe for now. Safe, the word echoed in her mind like thunder. Could she believe it? She lay back on the bed, her body stiff, her eyes never leaving him. She waited for the chain, the command, the punishment. But none came. He simply sat at the table, eating slowly, his face calm, his eyes distant as though deep in thought. The night grew quiet. Shadows stretched across the room. She closed her eyes but could not sleep. Fear and confusion fought inside her, yet beneath it all, a spark of something else flickered, something she had not felt in years, the faintest trace of hope lay. But hope was dangerous. Hope hurt. She turned on her side, pulling the blanket tight, whispering to herself not to trust, not to believe. She was nothing. She was meat. That was the truth the galaxy had told her. But then why had he bought her? Why had he fed her? Why had he freed her from the chain? Outside, the city buzzed with alien voices, but inside that room, silence ruled. A silence heavy with questions. The human finally broke it, saying softly that tomorrow they would leave the city. His tone left no space for doubt. It was not a question, but a decision. She opened her eyes in the dark, her voice trembling as she asked where they were going. He looked at her for a long moment, then answered simply, "Away from those who see only meat, to a place where you can breathe." The words sank into her like fire. She did not understand them fully, but they burned away a piece of the despair that had chained her for so long. Still she feared it was a dream. Still she feared that when morning came, everything would vanish. As sleep finally pulled her down, she clutched the blanket with weak hands, her mind filled with images of chains and laughter. But somewhere deeper she carried the memory of his voice, calm and steady, promising something she did not dare believe. In the corner, the human sat awake, his eyes fixed on the small lamp, his mind heavy with thoughts. He had seen countless markets, countless cruelties, but something about her silence, her trembling, her hopeless eyes had struck him like a blade. He did not yet know why, but he knew he could not leave her behind. And so, in that quiet room above the city, two lives rested side by side, one scarred by chains, one burdened by choice, both unaware that their meeting would echo far beyond this single night, and that the galaxy itself would tremble at what was to come. A fragile beginning. The morning light slipped through her. Her breath caught. The words felt heavy, almost painful. No one had ever said them to her. No one had ever believed them. Her chest tightened. She shook her head, whispering that he was wrong, that she was nothing. His eyes narrowed as he answered coldly, "Those who told you that were liars. They wanted you broken so you would never fight back." The girl's hands shook harder. She set the bowl aside and hugged her knees, her mind a storm of memories, chains, hunger, laughter, the auctioneer's voice calling her worthless. She wanted to believe him, she wanted to hold on to his words, but fear wrapped around her heart like iron. The human stood, packing supplies into a worn bag. He told her they would travel far. It would not be easy, there would be danger, but she would no longer walk alone. His words gave no space for doubt. It was a decision he had already made. She followed him out of the room, her steps light and uncertain. The streets were busy but different in the morning. Merchants shouting, carts rolling, guards watching. Yet she felt every eye on her, waiting for someone to drag her back. Every voice seemed to whisper less than meat. The human walked with confidence. The crowd parted around him. Even the guards did not step in his way. She wondered who he really was, why no one challenged him, why he carried himself with such quiet power. At the edge of the city, they reached a checkpoint, alien officers scanning travelers. She froze, fear surging through her chest. If they saw her, they would return her to the auction, to the cage. She pulled at his sleeve, whispering that they should turn back, but he only placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steady, his eyes telling her to trust. When they reached the officer, he spoke in a tone that left no space for questions, showing a document she could not read. The officer glanced at it, then waved them through without a word. Her legs nearly gave out. She stumbled, breathing fast. He caught her arm and held her steady, his voice low. "You are safe now, at least for this moment." She looked up at him, her eyes wide, the question burning inside her. Why? Why do this for me? He paused, then gave her an answer both simple and strange, "Because someone once did the same for me." The words hit her like a stone in the water, ripples spreading through her heart. She wanted to ask more, but he was already moving forward, guiding her down the long road away from the city, away from chains and laughter, towards something unknown. The land outside was wild, fields stretching under a pale sky. She had not seen such open space in years. Her chest rose and fell quickly, each breath filled with air that did not stink of cages or markets. It was strange. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. They walked for hours, the silence between them heavy but not cruel. He carried the bag with steady strength, offering her water when she grew weak. When she stumbled, he waited, never shouting, never striking, and each small act tore at the walls she had built to survive. That night they made camp near an old ruin, the firelight flickering on broken stones. She sat close to the flames, hugging the blanket he had given her, her eyes on him as he sat sharpening the blade again, the same patience in his movements. Finally, she whispered a question, so soft it nearly vanished in the wind. "What do you see when you look at me?" He paused, his hand stilling. Then he looked at her across the fire, his answer simple but strong. "I see someone who has been broken but not destroyed. Someone who still has fire inside." Her breath caught. The flames danced in her eyes. She wanted to deny it, wanted to say she was nothing, but something deep inside shifted, a small crack in the armor of despair she had carried for so long, and as she hurled into the blanket that night, the question would not leave her mind if he truly saw something inside her. Could it mean she was more than what the galaxy had said? Could it mean the bond forged in fire? The night air was heavy with smoke and the faint echo of battle. The girl sat near the remains of their small fire, her hands trembling as she tried to clean a wound on her arm. She had never fought before, never stood her ground, but today she had, and it scared her more than the pain. The human crouched beside her, his own jacket torn, blood staining his sleeve, yet his movements were calm as he tied a bandage around her arm, his eyes steady, his voice low. "You fought well, better than you think." She shook her head quickly, whispering that she was weak, useless, just a burden. But he only tightened the bandage and said firmly, "You are still here, and that means you are stronger than they want you to believe." Her chest ached. She could not look at him, her thoughts heavy with confusion. All her life, people had told her she was less than nothing. Now this human kept saying the opposite, each word striking her heart like fire. It hurt because she wanted to believe. The road ahead had grown dangerous. Word had spread of the human who bought worthless meat and dared to keep it alive. Alien whispers traveled fast. Some said he was mad. Others said he was dangerous. Some feared him. Some wanted him dead. They walked through burned villages and broken outposts. The galaxy felt like it was closing in on them. Yet in those ruined places, the girl found herself doing small things, helping him gather supplies, fixing torn fabric, even finding hidden paths through the rubble. Each time she acted, he gave her a nod, a simple acknowledgement that made her heart feel strange. At night by the fire, she would steal glances at him, wondering what kind of man carried such strength and yet spoke with such calm. His hands were rough from battles, but when they touched her, they were steady, never cruel. One evening he handed her a small tool, asking her to repair a devi. Ice from his pack, she froze, whispering that she could not, that she had no skill, but he only said, "Try." So with shaking fingers she worked, expecting failure, yet somehow the device lit up in her hand, a faint blue glow filling the dark. She gasped, dropping it in shock. He picked it up, smiling faintly, and said, "See? You are more than you think." Her chest tightened, tears filled her eyes. She had done something useful. The warmth of his words lit a fragile spark inside her, a spark that told her maybe she had worth. But danger followed close. One night as they rested, shadows moved through the trees, alien hunters, their voices sharp and filled with hate. They shouted that the girl must be returned, that she was property. The human stood tall, his hand on his blade, his voice like steel. "She is not yours. She is not property. She is with me." The fight came swift, blades clashing, sparks flying. She watched in terror as he moved with deadly precision, his body like a storm. Yet even then, he was not fighting for himself alone. He fought to protect her, to shield her. Every strike a promise that she was not worthless. One of the hunters broke past him, lunging for her. Instinct surged inside her chest. Fear and rage blending, she grabbed a broken branch and swung with all her strength. The strike hit true. The hunter stumbled, and she screamed, not in terror but in defiance. The human turned, his eyes meeting hers. There was no surprise, only approval. He finished the fight with a final blow. The hunters fled into the night, leaving silence heavy in the air. Her hands shook, the branch falling from her grip. She collapsed to her knees, whispering that she had killed, that she had become a monster. But the human knelt beside her, his voice steady. "You defended yourself. You lived. That is not a monster. That is strength." She looked at him through tears, her body trembling, and for the first time she felt something she had never known. Not just fear, not just gratitude, but trust, deep and fragile. She trusted him. She trusted that his words were true. From that night forward, something changed. She no longer walked behind him. She walked beside him, still uncertain, still afraid, but no longer completely broken. Her eyes lifted higher, her steps a little steadier. The galaxy still whispered, still mocked, still planned to tear them apart, but inside her a new bond was forming, forged not from chains or fear but from fire, from survival, from the strange truth that one human saw her not as meat but as someone. And as they moved on, through ruins and stars, the girl began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she could become more than what the galaxy had told her. Maybe she could become what he already saw, and she was not meat, but something else entirely, the ultimate test. The ruins gave way to wide plains under a red sky. The human and the girl walked side by side, their shadows long against the cracked earth. She carried herself differently now, her steps no longer dragging, her eyes not always fixed on the ground, yet fear still followed her like a ghost, whispering that the galaxy would never let her be free. Their journey took them to a small settlement, a hidden outpost where travelers gathered, but whispers spread quickly as soon as they arrived. The story of the human who bought worthless meat had traveled far, and now the settlement buzzed with curiosity and suspicion. It was there that they heard the sound of boots, heavy and organized. The crowd parted as alien soldiers marched into the square. At their head stood a commander with gleaming armor and eyes like knives. His voice thundered across the settlement. "The slave belongs to us. Hand her over now." The girl froze, her heart pounding. The world around her tilted. She wanted to run, to hide, but her legs would not move. The commander's soldiers raised their weapons. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for T. He human to surrender. But he did not move. He stood tall, his cloak stirring in the wind, his voice calm yet sharp as steel. "She is not a slave. She is not meat. She belongs to no one." The commander laughed, a cruel sound that made the girl's stomach twist. He said humans were fools, always pretending to see value in trash. The human's hand rested on his blade, but his eyes never left the commander. The tension thickened, the crowd holding their breath. The girl whispered his name, though her voice broke, telling him not to fight, telling him they could not win. But he shook his head, his voice low. "We do not run from lies." The soldiers advanced, their armor clanking. The girl's body shook with terror, yet something inside her cracked open, a memory of his words echoing in her chest. "You are more than they want you to believe." Her hands curled into fists, her breath sharp. She did not want to be dragged back to cages, not after she had walked free at his side. The battle erupted like a storm. The human moved with deadly grace, each strike fast and precise. The soldiers fell one after another, but the commander was different, strong and brutal. His blows shook the ground. The clash between them rang like thunder. The girl watched, torn between fear and fire. She wanted to hide, yet she could not stand still. When a soldier broke past the fight and rushed toward her, she grabbed a fallen weapon, her body moving before her mind. She blocked, she pushed, she screamed as she fought back. The crowd gasped, their eyes wide. The worthless meat was fighting, the slave was striking blows. It was unthinkable, yet here she was, standing her ground. The commander roared with rage, throwing the human back, his blade raised for the killing strike. The girl's heart stopped. She moved without thought, launching herself forward, the weapon in her hands clashing against the commander's arm. The force of it sent pain shooting through her body. But it was enough. The strike missed its mark. The human surged up, seizing the moment, his blade flashing. The commander stumbled, then fell. Silence swept across the settlement, broken only by the heavy breaths of the survivors. The soldiers fled, leaving their commander's body behind. The crowd stared in disbelief. No one spoke. They had witnessed the impossible. The worthless girl had stood against power. The human had refused to surrender. Together they had broken the lie that she was less than meat. The girl dropped the weapon, her body trembling. She looked at the human, fear and fire clashing in her eyes. She whispered, "I should have died. Why did you save me again?" He stepped closer, his voice quiet but unshakable. "Because you are alive, and that is enough reason." Her knees gave out. Tears filled her eyes. She pressed her hands against her face, the crowd still whispering around them, some with awe, some with fear. But she no longer cared. For the first time in her life, she had stood against the chains. For the first time, she had chosen to fight. The human placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. The firelight of the settlement flickered across his face, his eyes calm even after battle, the bond between them no longer fragile. It had been tested in fire, and it had endured. But far away across the stars, news of the fight would spread, and more powerful enemies would come. For the galaxy had seen something it could not ignore. A human who refused to see anyone as worthless, and a girl who had risen from chains to strike at power itself. And so their journey was not over. It had only begun. More than meat, more than slave. The settlement was silent long after the battle ended. Smoke from burning torches curled into the sky. The people stared at the human and the girl as if they had seen ghosts. The commander's body still lay in the dust, proof that the impossible had happened. The girl stood unsteady, her body trembling, yet her eyes were different now, no longer fixed to the ground, no longer filled only with fear. She had stood, she had fought, she had chosen to live, and that choice burned inside her like a new flame. The human looked at her with steady eyes, his blade still in his hand, his cloak torn, his body bruised, yet his voice calm. "You are free now," he said. "You can walk any path you wish. No one will chain you again, not while I breathe." His words struck her like lightning. Freedom. It was a word she had never truly understood. It frightened her. It thrilled her. She whispered that she did not know how to be free. She did not know who she was beyond the names they had called her. He nodded slowly, as if he expected that answer, then said something that shook her even deeper. "Then choose who you want to be. You are not bound by their lies, not by their laughter, not by their cruelty. You choose now." Her throat tightened. Tears welled in her eyes. She looked around at the crowd, at the faces that once would have mocked her. Now they stared in silence, some with awe, some with shame. She wanted to scream at them, to tell them they were wrong all along. But instead, she looked only at the human, the one who had seen something else in her. The crowd began to whisper again, words spreading like sparks. Some said the human had bewitched her. Others said she was dangerous now, no longer worthless. And that made them afraid. She felt the weight of their voices, but for once she did not bow under it as they prepared to leave the settlement. A child ran forward from the crowd, small hands clutching at the girl's sleeve. The child whispered, "You were brave." The words broke her. Heart and healed it at the same time. She knelt down, her voice trembling. "I was not brave alone. The human gave me strength, but you must remember strength can live in anyone, even in those they call worthless." The human watched her, his eyes soft for the first time since she had known him. He saw something in her that was no longer fragile, no longer only fear. He saw someone who was becoming whole. On the road again they walked in silence, the stars bright above. She carried no chains now, only the memory of fire and choice. Finally she spoke, her voice low. "You said I am free, but freedom means I can also choose to stay. I want to walk beside you, not as meat, not as slave, but as someone." The human paused, looking at her in the starlight, his face unreadable. Then he nodded once, firm and certain. "Then stay. But stay because it is your choice, not mine." Her heart pounded, her hands clenched, and for the first time she smiled. Not a wide smile, not a careless one, but a small, fragile smile born from a place that had long been dark. The galaxy would not forget what happened. Messages would spread, commanders would hear, enemies would come, yet none of that mattered in this moment. In this quiet night under the endless sky, what mattered was that she was no longer what they called her. She was more. Together they walked into the unknown, side by side, not master and slave, not rescuer and rescued, but two lives bound by choice and fire. And though the galaxy had once said she was worth less than meat, the truth burned brighter now. To a human, she was priceless. To herself, she was becoming something she had never dared believe. Alive, free, and unbroken. The end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.